Eso es live.
Está bien, ¿no, Sam?
Uh-huh.
Es como si fuera en vivo, pum, sale. Estemos seguros de que está todo bien, que no haya que hacer 2 veces las cosas.
Yeah. Okay. So you can start just
Okay.
this one. See?
But are they? They're not in sync.
Oh no? Yeah, no. Oh. Maybe it's because COVID. It was.
Pero aquella va a andar sola, ¿no?
Hmm?
¿Va a andar solo o no?
No. Supposed to. It was working. Mm-hmm. Mm-mm.
¿Qué es la manera que se programa?
Mm-hmm. Just present the review.
¿Y él no lo puede hacer en la de él?
Yeah, maybe.
No. Si se puede hacer ahí, mejor, más fácil, ¿no? Porque ya usted lo tiene que
No, pero es que tiene que compartir su pantalla y
con YouTube.
sí, comparte la pantalla y comparte la presentación y tiene que tener otra cosa aquí para que pueda, si no, no va a poder verlo aquí y luego ponerlo en la presentación en full screen.
¿No hay una manera más fácil de hacerlo?
I can always use my computer.
¿Ah? Yeah, so you want.
¿Y qué haría en la computadora de él? Todo.
No, I don't know.
¿Tiene que grabarse en YouTube? Sí. Si lo vamos a grabar, porque no lo vamos a presentar directo ahorita.
No, yo sé por eso, pero él quiere que funcione la PowerPoint con esto. Ya está funcionando. Relax. Yeah, this was just it was working.
Yeah, and then the other thing it didn't look like it was going to do was towards the end here on these last slides. It's not going to let me just have these appear, right? It's just having it all at the same time.
I don't know. Oh, so you need one first and then.
So it's programmed so they appear one at a time, but it didn't look like it was doing that.
Hold on. Let's see.
Oh, good.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Okay, so it does do that.
So it's gonna
Perfect.
start like,
Okay.
and then
Just doesn't do it on the slide. Okay.
uh-huh. Yeah. That's a good movie.
Yeah, I mean, so I mean, I just have to use this and this. That's fine.
Yeah.
That's not a big deal.
No, but it was working. So
I know. I saw it working. I know you're not lying because I saw it working.
Yeah, but I don't know what
I don't know
happened.
why.
So maybe I need to close it and close and open again. Maybe. Let's see.
Yeah.
So this. See what's something here. Okay, monitors. There's no what. Yeah. Okay, it's right here. So now it's working. No. Yeah, okay, now it's working.
Really? Okay, now we can't see the. Oh, the notes are there. Yeah, that's fine. That works fine.
So
Yeah, that's fine.
let me see if I can make it smaller. Or you can read. Yeah, no, it's working.
Yeah, look at that. It's working.
Yeah. So okay. So let's see. Let's go to the first one. Yeah.
Great.
Okay.
So let me
All
just.
right. Yep, we're ready.
Okay. Okay. Good luck, Chuck.
All right.
Anything else you need now?
No.
Set it. Put it all together. Kill it at the end.
Okay.
Put a good CTA. Okay. This is the one.
Yep.
That is gonna go around, and we're gonna be sending everybody here.
You want me to start?
Yeah.
Oh, I can start whenever?
Yeah.
So I'm sorry. I've been waiting.
Yeah, you want me to?
Okay. Great. Hello and welcome to turning struggling and reluctant readers into passionate and more proficient readers. My name is Danny Brissell, and I really want to thank you for being here. I congratulate you on your journey. I'm just like you. When I started teaching, I was trying to figure out ways to help struggling and reluctant readers. Heck, I was a struggling and reluctant reader. So I'm grateful that you've joined me today and given me your time. So by the end of this presentation, you'll learn how to pump your child up about reading. You'll learn how to make your child feel more comfortable reading. And I'm going to provide you with tools that you can use immediately to help your child become a better reader. Are you excited for this webinar? Well, get pumped. So now you're wondering, who is this guy? Well, my name is Danny Brissell, and I am on a mission to bring joy back into education. I've actually taught all age levels, from preschoolers all the way up to rocket scientists. I can make that claim because I used to teach English as a second language to engineering students at the University of Southern California. I became a teacher because of the movie Stand and Deliver. If you haven't seen that movie, I encourage you to check it out on Netflix. It's the true story of Jaime Escalante going to Garfield High School in East Los Angeles to teach AP Calculus. So I said, I'm going to be Jaime Escalante. So I was originally hired to teach 12th grade social studies in Compton, California. It's a community in South Central Los Angeles. And they switched me from working with high school students to middle school students to upper elementary to lower elementary to pretty soon, instead of preparing students for college, I was coming home with snot marks on my kneecaps. The first thing I learned is what works with a 12th grader does not necessarily work with a kindergartner. But what works with a kindergartner works with all age levels. The second thing I learned was perseverance. Have you ever been in a negative environment where everybody around you was telling you what you couldn't do? One of my old principals, Mrs. Lucifer, she used to fly into my classroom on her broomstick every single day with her foreboding clipboard and her perma-scowl. And she used to write me up for everything she thought I was doing wrong as a teacher. She was killing me, draining away all my energy. But I had a guardian angel. I taught in a school where I was the only man at my school. I was also the only white person at my school. I taught in a school that had predominantly elderly African-American women who'd all been teaching for at least 20 years. Well, my mentor was Mrs. Turner. Mrs. Turner, she'd been teaching for 40 years. And Mrs. Turner, she believed in two things: discipline and the Bible. When her little ones got out of line, she started reading aloud Revelations to them. And she said something which I'll always remember. She looked at me one day and she said, "Mr. Brissell, it ain't your fault. Nobody ever taught you how to teach." That may have been true. Well, it was Mrs. Turner who taught me a system on how to bring joy into education every single day. And hopefully I'll be able to impart some of her wisdom on all of you during the course of this webinar. So raise your hand if you'd like to learn how to get your child to read. Well, I know the secret. Reading should always be fun. Human beings are pleasure-oriented creatures. I'll give you an example. My wife and I were finishing dinner one night, and my wife asked me if I wanted some more green beans. And I said, "Oh, honey, I am stuffed." She said, "Well, we got chocolate cake for dessert." And I said, "Just a small slice." You see, you always find room for things that you like. I've always known that I'm in a good classroom when the bell rings and the children don't hop out of their seats because they want to finish whatever it is that they're reading. That is a good reading classroom. Now, we're talking about struggling and reluctant readers. And I want you to know, struggling readers are not illiterate, but they benefit greatly from your teaching assistance. And it's ironic that working with struggling and reluctant readers is my passion and it's kind of my forte. I mean, I hated reading as a child. I mean, my father was a librarian, and I always hated libraries growing up. Public libraries always freaked me out. You know, the furniture was uncomfortable. They had a smell about them. There was always an elderly woman telling me to be quiet. And there's always a freak that thinks he's a vampire that hangs out at the public library. Always freaked me out. Another thing my parents used to always tell me is that when I was a little child, I used to crawl into their bedroom and I would rip pages out of the books in their private library and eat the pages. And my parents would smack me on the hand and say, "Stay away from the books, Danny, stay away from the books." And so I claim to this day that's probably why I didn't like reading as a child. Anyway, I thought I would share with you a traumatic story about my childhood, reading with my mother before I went to bed every single night. Now, my mom and I used to read a storybook that began Once Upon a Time, which looks fairly straightforward, except I didn't see the O, because the O was a weird shape. It was in a black box. There was all kinds of vines around it. And so my mom would say, "Okay, Danny, read to me." And I'd point to the words and say, "Once upon a time." And she'd patiently say, "No, Danny, that word says once. Say once." And I'd say, "Once." She's like, "Again." I'd stare at the words and then I'd begin, "Once upon a time." She's like, "No, Danny, that word says once. Say once twice." And I'd say, "Once, once." And she'd say, "Again," forcefully. Well, now I'm really starting to sweat. I'd look at that phrase from different angles. Finally, I would point to the words and say, "Once upon a time." And my mom would scream at me, "You never learn anything. They're going to put you in special ed." I was always crying before I went to bed. One day, a buddy of mine came over to my house to play, and for some reason I took out this book. I guess I wanted to impress him with my reading abilities. And so I pointed to the words and said, "Once upon a time." And he looked at me and said, "Hey, nincompoop, you see that black box with the weird shape with the vines all around it? That's an O, silly. That word says once." And I looked at it and I read, "Once upon a time." Now, I'll tell you why I always share that story with parents and teachers. Sometimes we try 38 strategies with a kid, and we're ignoring one of the single greatest resources at our disposal: other kids. Kids and adults think differently. I mean, I've known this ever since I was a kid. When I was in kindergarten, Sister Rosanna asked us as a class one day if all of us wanted to go to heaven, and all of us raised our hands except for Hector. She looked and scorned at Hector and said, "You don't want to go to heaven, Hector?" And Hector looked up at her innocently and said, "Oh, I thought you were talking about today." He's right. He's just looking at her question from a totally different point of view. That's something you need to know about me. I was a struggling and reluctant reader. It's ironic. Now it's my specialty. I love working with struggling and reluctant readers. Can I give you a tip right now? You can put this in your sock drawer as a special secret. Here's the tip. 4 out of 5 of our struggling and reluctant readers are going to be boys. Boys and girls are very different. Girls will read books about boys. Little boys will not read books about little girls. Now, there's always obviously exceptions. I was working with a 3rd grade teacher one day, and she told me her student Mario didn't know how to read. And I said, "Well, I'll get Mario reading within an hour." I was wrong. It actually only took me 20 minutes. And the book that I handed Mario, he enjoyed it so much, he memorized the first chapter by the next week. The book I handed Mario was called Just Disgusting by Andy Griffiths, not the Sheriff of Mayberry. This is an Australian author. He wrote The Day My Butt Went Psycho. I don't remember everything about the first chapter, but Mario could rattle off the entire first chapter. The first chapter was the 101 most disgusting things. And he'd say, number 12, dog poop. Number 13, stepping in dog poop. Number 14, trying to wipe the dog poop off your shoe and getting it stuck on your fingers. Number 15, eating a hot dog that tastes like dog poop. Number 16, realizing the hot dog tastes like dog poop because you forgot to wash your hands. That's how you get a little boy excited about reading. I mean, don't get me wrong, folks. I think Little Women is a wonderful book. But if you want a little boy reading that book, you need to put diarrhea in the title. It's those simple tips that I'm going to share with you during this webinar that will hopefully get you excited about getting your own child excited about reading. Now, teaching in the inner city, I worked with lots of struggling and reluctant readers. As a matter of fact, most of my students began the school year classified well below grade level, so I was always searching for ways to help them. Now, even though I was making a lot of money as a public school teacher, I decided to take a tutoring job after school for the fun of it. They paid me $30 an hour, which I thought was amazing, until I found out the center charged the parents $125 an hour. Then I realized I was getting the short end of the stick. Oh, by the way, that's not me in the photo. I couldn't find a photo of me from tutoring. Those are two other people. I got to work one-on-one with students for an hour a week. And you have to understand that I didn't really know what I was doing. I just needed the money. I believe anyone can teach, but it takes a lot of hard work to be a good teacher. And it was my mentor, Mrs. Turner. She taught me a secret. And that secret was how to bring joy into learning. And I used her system with the students I tutored. Now, I tutored students for only an hour a week. And within 6 months, I was amazed to receive accolades for how well my students were improving. I mean, it was amazing. Other tutors began asking me for tips. Even my boss wanted to know the secret approach I was using. And the truth was, it wasn't me. It was a simple system I used to keep the kids occupied. Kids like Gabe. Gabe was one of my favorites. He was a high school student. Now, what I'm talking about in this program is really geared more towards young children, but I can tell you I've also used it with older students. Gabe was a 10th grader. He was the state champion in the 138-pound weight division in wrestling, whatever that means. His coach came to me and told me that Gabe was academically ineligible, and I had 6 months to get him to be academically eligible, or he wouldn't be able to compete in the wrestling state championships the next year. Well, Gabe had a 1.5 grade point average, and I looked at Gabe and challenged him, saying, Gabe, if you can boost your 1.5 grade point average to a 2.5, I'll let you shave my head. You know what Gabe did? In 6 months' time, he rose to a 3.8 grade point average. And I didn't do anything requiring a doctoral degree to help him. I just used the simple system that I'm talking about in this webinar. Brian was one of my sweetest kids. I'll always remember Brian because he cried the first time we worked together because he was freaked out by me. He was only in 2nd grade, and his school had labeled him as ADHD and recommended he be held back. I love how schools like to label children, especially when they're only 7 or 8 years old. So his mother begged me to work with him. And in 6 months' time, he was one of the top readers in his class. And I'll always remember Brian because he cried during our last session together because he didn't want to leave. Kiara's 1st grade teacher told me he don't know nothing. Thank you for that. Well, Kiara, who didn't know nothing, would come into the reading clinic with a smile on his face and say, Hey, Danny, you see Barkley last night? He scored 38 points, had 18 boards, 16 assists. Thank you, Kiara. Kiara did me a huge favor. He showed me what he was interested in, which was basketball. And from that point forward, all we read about was the NBA, particularly the Lakers, Kiara's favorite team. By the end of the school year, his 1st grade teacher had trouble explaining to his parents why he was one of her best readers. Now, LaShonda was one of my favorites. Again, remember that 4 out of 5 of your struggling and reluctant readers are going to be boys. Boys and girls are very different. Now, I didn't tutor LaShonda exactly. She was in a juvenile detention facility, and one of her caseworkers was a friend of mine who asked for some help. So I only worked with LaShonda a few times, and I taught my buddy Rachel how to follow the system every week for an hour. She wound up meeting with LaShonda a couple of times a week, and not only is LaShonda no longer in the juvie hall, I'm proud to say that she was the first person in her family to graduate high school, and she's an avid reader to this day. Now, folks, this doesn't have to be rocket science. There are lots of myths out there, and I'd like to dispel some of them right now for you. Here's myth number 1. Phonics is the best way to teach children to read. Do you want to know the secrets to good teaching? Yoda told me. He did. It comes to us from a professor at Harvard by the name of Howard Gardner. Attractive man. He's available, ladies. I hear he's quite the party guy. Well, Howie, back in the mid-1980s, wrote a book where he described 7 multiple intelligences. Then about 20 years ago, he wrote another book where he described 2 new intelligences, so he could charge another $20 for that book. While Gardner's multiple intelligence theory is important, he actually stole most of his ideas from a more important educational philosopher of the late 1970s by the name of Gary Coleman. Gary Coleman said, "Teachers and parents, all you got to remember is this: different strokes for different folks." I want you to say that at home right now. Different strokes for different folks. Every kid is different. This is what makes teaching such a challenging position. This year's batch can be totally different than last year's batch. Second period is polar opposite from 5th period. Again, they say anyone can teach, and I completely agree with that. Anyone can teach, but it takes a lot of hard work to be a good teacher. I hate that saying. The one that really drives me nuts is when they say, "Oh, if you touch just one child, you have made a difference." I used to tell my teachers, hey, if you touch just one kid, please find another job. Let's shoot for the moon and get at least half the kids achieving in this country. It's amazing how low we set the expectations for students. I've learned that one size does not fit all. Now, I know I've got a lot of parents listening to this webinar. This one's for teachers right now. Every class I've ever taught has a Yesenia and a Jose. Let's say you're teaching 3rd grade this year. You're not teaching 3rd grade. You're teaching anywhere from 7th grade to caveman. Every class I have ever taught, I have at least one little girl named Yesenia who shows up a half an hour early to class every single day saying, "Hello, Mr. Purcell. I rearranged the desk, and I thought of a way you could integrate social studies with science, and I just did my math homework for the next 5 years." And then there's Jose. Jose shows up 10 minutes late to class every single day, holding his pencil like he just discovered fire. Pencil, pencil. And in my experience, Yesenia usually gets transferred out of my class within 3 weeks, and Jose never misses a day of school, which is fine. I became a teacher for Jose, not Yesenia. She's going to do fine with or without me. I can actually have a real impact on Jose. And actually, Yesenia needs me too, just in a very different way. I've always thought one of the silliest things we strive for in American education is equality. Folks, kids don't need to be treated equally. They need to be treated fairly. Some kids don't require much attention. Some kids require a lot of extra attention. We have to give every kid exactly what it is that they need. It's almost as ridiculous as the reading wars. Now, I've been in higher education now for over 20 years, and they're still debating on how do you teach a kid how to read. I mean, you got people on one end of the spectrum that say the way you teach a kid how to read is alligator, ball, cat, because that's the way we all speak. And there's people on the other end of the spectrum that say, okay, Tomas, I want you to take this book home, Tomas, put it under your pillow, and when you wake up, you'll know how to read, Tomas. And I'm being facetious, folks, because we know if you want to learn how to read, knowing the sounds of some of the blends is somewhat helpful, isn't it? It certainly is. And we know having opportunities to read for fun is somewhat helpful, isn't it? It certainly is. But we know we need to have a balanced approach. But this is what I've learned as a teacher. If I got a kid that loves sitting there doing phonics worksheets, what should I do? Give them phonics worksheets. If I got a kid that loves sitting in the corner reading on her own, what should I do? Let her. The school was built for them, not for me. I mean, I'm not a big hooked on phonics guy because I stuttered while I was a child. I mean, my teachers were trying to get me hooked off phonics. I'd say ball, and my teacher would say, no, it's just ball, Danny. But I confess, I have taught some children how to read using a phonics-based approach. It's not my preferred approach. Can I give you a teaching secret? English is not a phonics-based language, folks. Spanish is. I can teach any of you how to read in Spanish in 6 weeks or less. Ma, me, mi, mo, mu. Nice and consistent. Look at this symbol. What sound does this symbol make in Spanish? Ah. Always ah. You know, English. Ah. Ah. A. Ugh. Sounds like I'm about to vomit. That symbol can make 18 different sounds in English. Not the most useful strategy. And I'm always looking for the most useful strategies to help children. Now, here's another myth I hear all the time. We used to do a better job of teaching children to read. Well, folks, as the song goes, the good old days weren't always so good. Research shows that we've never done a better job, but research also shows we've never done a worse job. Translation, reading scores have not changed significantly in the past 50 years in America. What's important to understand is while literacy proficiency rates have not changed dramatically, the need for literacy has increased dramatically. I mean, I love people talking about the good old days. Folks, you need to understand the good old days weren't so good for everybody in this country. So let's always keep that in mind. And finally, let me give you one more myth. Some children just cannot learn how to read. That is a bunch of malarkey. This is the belief that some people are just genetically dyslexic. And it ignores the fact that reading and writing simply have not been around long enough to become part of our genetic makeup. Frankly, the term dyslexia is basically meaningless. The term simply means difficulty with words, and anybody who's not learned to read could be called dyslexic. Now, clearly, some people have more difficulty learning to read than others, but you have to know this, folks. Good instruction can overcome any environmental causes for reading difficulties. Every reading disability is curable. By the way, I thought you'd find this interesting. Among some of the world's most famous dyslexics are people like comedian Jay Leno, billionaire entrepreneur Richard Branson. Oh, and yes, Albert Einstein. So I don't know about you, but I'm eager to learn more about this system I've used to help struggling and reluctant readers improve their reading so dramatically in just 6 months. Are you ready for it? All right, hang on. Now, when I used to work one-on-one with the students I tutored, I never liked lesson planning. So I always would lesson plan by creating one big rectangle. Then I would divide the rectangle into 6 smaller rectangles. Each rectangle represented 10 minutes of an activity with the child. Why 10 minutes? Because the average American has an attention, what was I talking about? Average Americans can sit and listen for about 17 minutes, give or take 17 minutes. So I created what I called the 6 blocks program. 6 blocks, each is 10 minutes long. 10 minutes times 6, let me see, do my math. That equals 60 minutes. hey, let's make it even more simple for you. Instead of 60 minutes, we'll just call it 1 hour. We're definitely not going to call it 360 seconds. Okay, so the 6 Blocks program had 6 components, and I'm going to go through each of these during the webinar. First block is to talk with the student. Secondly is to have a book talk. Then we have a picture read. The second half of our program is to read aloud to the student, to read with our student in a partner read, and finally to conclude with writing and games. So why don't we take them one step at a time, beginning with the first block in the 6 Blocks program, which is to talk with your student. Okay, people always ask me, what kind of questions should I ask my student? Now, when I'm saying with my student, I'll tell you why. This is a program I developed for a nonprofit organization where I trained over 10,000 volunteers to work one-on-one with struggling readers for an hour a week over a 6-month period. And survey results from this organization showed that if you do this program for an hour a week over 6 months, you can expect that child's reading ability to rise 2 to 3 grade levels. Folks, it's really simple. It has very little to do with what I'm going to be training you all about. It has to do with that one-on-one. I think everything in life is based on relationships, and relationships are key to this program. Can I give you a tip, by the way? When I trained volunteers to do this program with struggling readers, I trained a lot of parents, a lot of community members, a lot of older siblings how to work one-on-one with struggling readers. Usually they were kindergartners, first, second, third, maybe even 4th graders. And I'll tell you what, the program works a whole lot easier when you're not working with your own child. And I'll tell you why. No child will listen to his or her own parent. My own 3 children will not listen to me. So the tip I always gave parents is swap kids. Why don't you tutor your kid's best friend and have your kid tutored by the best friend's parents? It sounds kind of crazy, but trust me on this, folks. You'll get a lot more out of it by having your child work with somebody else. And so I always reserve the first 10 minutes of the 6 Blocks program to talking with a student. And I just want you to remember this. The whole purpose of talking with the child is to find out what the child is interested in. And so I wanted to give you some sample questions you can ask your child. What's your favorite food? What's your favorite sports team? What's your favorite date on the calendar? Now, if I don't know the kid, I'll always ask, who do you live with? And the reason I ask it that way is I used to work at a preschool for homeless Latino children, and I used to ask the question, who do you live with at home? And I'd have kids crying because they didn't have a home. And so I try to figure out the most generic way to phrase questions so I'm not offending anybody or causing duress on a child. So speaking of duress, before I was a teacher, I was a journalist, and I was trained, if you ask a yes or no question, you should expect to get a yes or no answer. And so let's say I ask the child, do you have any pets? And this is what the kid says. No, I don't have any pets. Everybody else has a pet. I don't have a pet. And the kid goes into the fetal position because they're all messed in the head because you asked them about pets. Hey, I always try to train people. Take a negative, turn it into a positive. So here's all you'd have to do. Well, if you could have any pet in the world, what would you have? The kid's like, penguin? I don't really care what the kid answers. I just want to find out what the child is interested in because I'm trying to find out what types of books and reading materials to get for this kid. Now, to me, the 2 greatest words in the English language are what if. What if you could have lunch with anybody? What if you could travel anywhere? What if you could do anything? I want to find out the aspirations of this child. I'm all about trying to find out what drives this child. Too many school programs are designed for a one-size-fits-all, and that doesn't work with most kids. Kids have very specific interests, and if we're going to make them readers, we got to build a program based around their interests. So that was our first 10 minutes with the student, was talking with them, getting to know them. And by all means, talk about yourself as well. Kids are just as interested in us as we are in them. They want to find out about us. And the more they find out about you, the more they'll open up to you. So then the second block in the 6 Blocks program is what I call a book talk. Now, when you do a book talk, you got to be Crazy Eddie. Have you ever seen Crazy Eddie on TV? I'm Crazy Eddie. I'm going insane. I got to get rid of this merchandise. He gets you excited about something he's selling. Well, I'm trying to sell the kid on books. And so I always ask people, what's the spice of life? Well, the spice of life is variety. We need to give kids lots of choices. So what that means for us is let's provide lots of great reading materials to our kids. I mean, you know, make sure you have lots of books available. I mean, I have big books and little books and scratch and snip books and pop-up books. But let's face it, folks, some kids don't like books. So make sure you get kids excited about newspapers. I mean, heck, when I was a kid, the only thing I like to do was eat. You got a kid like that, give them a menu. They'll read that. Point out environmental print around them. Get the kids' magazine subscriptions. Magazines like Sports Illustrated for Kids, Highlights, National Geographic. Comic books. Comic books count. I'll do corporate trainings, and I'll be with all these executives in suits, and I always ask, well, what was your favorite book growing up? And I can't believe it. It's always at least 70% of the audience says Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, Batman. So get comic books in the hands of those kids. Trading cards. I can't tell you how many little boys, the way I got them hooked on reading was starting off with Cam Newton or Peyton Manning's football card. Leapfrog. You know, Leapfrog makes me feel like an old guy. I wish Leapfrog existed when I was a kid. I think it's awesome that the books talk to you. Get reference books. You know, every class I've ever taught, I have at least one little boy who's an aspiring Cliff Clavin who likes to give me useless information. He'll be like, Mr. Marcel, the capital of Vermont is Montpelier. I'm like, great, Rogelio. Can you give me some more useless information tomorrow? He's like, okay, give that kid an almanac. There's a great episode of Friends where Joey's trying to look intelligent, but he can't afford an entire set of encyclopedias. So he just gets the letter V. You know, give the kid an encyclopedia. So you want to give the kids lots of different options. But what I wanted to do for you in this brief amount of time I have with you today is to just model for you what I do when I do a book talk. So can I do that right now? I'm going to give you a book talk. And what I'm trying to do is to sell you on any of these books to get you excited about these books. And so the first book I selected was called Walter Was Worried by Laura Vaccaro Seeger. So this book is about Walter, and Walter was so worried you could see it written all over his face. And if you look at the features of his face, they're the letters that spell out the word worried. If you go through the book, every single child's expression in the book actually spells out their expression. Now, I know we're not supposed to teach kids about music and art anymore, but I really like music and art, and so I try to incorporate them whenever I can. So I love to introduce kids to an artsy book like this. Next book I picked out is called Bark George by Jules Feiffer. I think you'll find, folks, I like funny books. I'll tell you why. I used to tell my little ones, you have the rest of your life to be miserable. This year we're laughing. When I taught kindergartners, I'd tell them the average adult in America laughs 15 times a day. The average kindergartner laughs 300 times a day. Your job is to make me laugh 315 times every single day. I love little kids. They always make me laugh. And I love books that make little kids laugh. Jules Feiffer has been a cartoonist with the New Yorker for over 50 years. And this is about a mama dog talking to her puppy. And she says, bark, George. He's like, squeak, squeak. Bark, George. He's like, meow. Bark, George. He's like, moo. You know. So she takes him to the veterinarian, and the veterinarian removes the horse, the cow, all the different animals. And so the very last page, she takes him home from the vet, and the mama dog says, bark, George. And George says, hello. See, I like funny books. But just to show you that I have a heart, I wanted to give you a heartwarming tale. This one is called Mama by Jeanette Winter. Now, this is about a mama hippo and a baby hippo. The baby hippo always looks up to mama and says, Mama. and the mama hippo looks down at the baby hippo and says, "Baby." And that's pretty much what it says on every page. Well, as you're turning the pages, if you're paying attention, you'll notice the skies are getting darker and more ominous. Well, this is actually a true story. It's Southeast Asia in 2004. The tsunami hits. Mama and baby hippo are separated. Now, baby hippo is found, but they don't find mama hippo. So baby hippo is put in a zoo in Thailand in a pen with a 250-year-old tortoise. And the last page has the baby hippo looking at the tortoise saying, "Mama!" And the tortoise looking at the baby hippo saying, "Baby!" And the reason I love books like this is because now it gets the child excited about the real story, which is called Owen and Mazee, the true story of a remarkable friendship. And this is one of the ways you can get your kid excited about nonfiction. And just a tip, folks, boys in particular really like nonfiction. Books about rocks and minerals, books about animals, books about facts. But I want you to remember these 3 words. Kids love dinosaurs. And that's why you have to get a copy of this book, Encyclopedia Prehistorica Dinosaurs by Robert Zabuda and Matthew Reinhart. Now, Robert Zabuda, he never actually read a pop-up book when he was a child, and that's why he's totally redefined the entire genre. I'm telling you, folks, if you have a child that doesn't like to read, I will show you a book with a T-Rex popping out of the page that'll definitely get that kid excited about reading. Now, I'll warn you, these books can be expensive. They can be about $28 because they belong in museums. So this is a book, if I'm a teacher, I put it on my teacher desk, and this is now a very special book. And so I'll say, okay, Nestor, you're my student of the day. You get to take the pop-up book home. And so Nestor, he goes, oh, he carefully picks up the book, holds it up to the class. Oh, believe me, if you train kids how to take care of books, they will take care of books, especially the special books. But you have to understand, they're little kids, folks. Kids often, there's wear and tear on books. They drop books. So it's tough. The kids can be tough on books. But I always want to make sure children have very positive experiences with books. Now, they're testing kids at younger and younger ages in this country. Pretty soon, they're going to test kids in the womb. I'm convinced of that. And what I have a problem with is they'll test a first grader on his reading ability, and the kid bombs the test. And so now they label the kid a low reader, and most likely 9 times out of 10, they now label the low reader a low student, which is a big mistake in my experience, because a lot of my lowest readers are some of my top mathematicians. And so this is a book for my math students to get excited about. This is a friend of mine, Greg Tang. He writes all kinds of great math riddle books to get kids excited about math. So this is The Grapes of Math. He has a book called Masterpieces. He has another one called Math Potatoes. But this is a great way to get kids excited about reading who maybe they're more excited about math right now. Now, to get the kids excited about science, you have to get this author. Steve Jenkins is one of my favorite science authors for kids today. This book, Actual Size, is a huge hit in my classroom. So Actual Size, what it does is it shows pictures of different animals. So it says, this is the actual size of the monarch butterfly. And so kids will put their hand next to the picture of the butterfly. It'll say, the dwarf goby is the smallest of all fish. This is its actual size. And so kids will put their finger next to it. Just a great way to get kids excited about science. Now, another thing I know a lot of kids love are sports. Now, I don't normally endorse celebrity books because most of them are pretty lame, but this book was pretty well written. Salt in His Shoes by Dolores Jordan. Now, Dolores, her son Michael, became a fairly famous basketball player. This is the true story of Michael Jordan when he was a boy. His team was down by a point. They gave Michael the ball. 3, 2, 1. He shoots and he misses. He is devastated. He runs home crying. He gets home. He's like, Mama, Mama, the team lost the game because I missed the final shot. How do I get better? And Mrs. Jordan looked at Michael and said, Michael, if you want to get better than everybody else, you got to do 2 things. Every single day, you got to practice harder than everybody else. And every single night, you got to put salt in your shoes so you'll grow, boy. Well, Michael, he listens to Mama. And every single day, he practices harder than everybody else. And every single night, he puts salt in his shoes so he'll grow. The same situation a year later, his team's down by 1. They give Michael the ball. 3, 2, 1. He shoots. Read the book. Find out what happens. This is a strategy I use with kids all the time. You want to get a kid excited about reading. Never give them the ending. Make them look for that ending. And finally, I wanted to share with you one of my favorite books of all time, Tadpole's Promise by Gene Willis. This is a wonderful love story about a caterpillar who's in love with a tadpole. And Caterpillar looks at Tad and says, Tad, I love you. Promise me one thing. Promise me you'll never change. And Tadpole says, oh, Caterpillar, I love you. And I promise I'll never change. Well, what happens to Tadpole? You guessed it. He starts to change. Caterpillar looks at him. She's like, you lied to me. And she dumps him. So she climbs up a tree. She forms a cocoon. Eventually, she emerges from the chrysalis, a butterfly. And you know what? It's at this moment when Caterpillar realizes all of us change. I was too harsh on Tadpole. So she flies down to apologize to Tadpole. And now he's a bullfrog. And he sticks out his tongue and he eats her. The end. My kindergartners will look at me and say, what? And I'm like, be nice to each other, kids. This is probably why you don't want me teaching your child. I have a pretty wicked sense of humor. So the point is, did I get you excited about any of those books? This is what you have to do during a book talk. So if you don't read a lot, you're going to have to start reading a lot, or you're going to have to find a librarian that reads a lot, or find somebody from your bookstore, or you can go to my website, lazyreaders.com. If you subscribe, it's a free subscription. Once a month for the rest of your life, I update the site with 10 new book recommendations. 3 or 4 adult level books, 3 or 4 young adult level books, and 3 or 4 children's level books, all under 250 pages, so you have something you can read when you're stuck in waiting rooms and boring meetings. So that takes us to the 3rd block in the 6 blocks program, which is a picture read. Now, I want to show you something. This is what a picture book looks like to a non-reader. There's pictures, and then there's a bunch of gobbledygook. One of the things I like to point out to teachers and parents is that if we select really good picture books, these pictures will help us figure out what the gobbledygook actually says. So I want you to look at that picture and think about what you see. Can you tell me at home what you see? Well, I'll tell you what I see. I see a bunch of pigs, and they're inside a house, and they're surrounding a man who's reading a book. So why don't we open it up and let's read the book. So what's going on? It looks like the man is reading a book. He's sitting in his recliner next to a lamp. All right. And who just showed up? All the pigs showed up. And what are the pigs doing? Yeah, I mean, he's got cross-dressing bacon in his living room. The pigs are being silly in his living room. And how are they getting there? It looks like they're getting there by train and by bus. And so let's look at this picture. What's happening now? Where are they looking? Looks like they're looking out the window. All right. And what are they doing now? They're eating pizza. Okay. And what's he saying? He's saying, get out. And what are they doing now? They're cleaning up. And how about now? They're brushing their teeth and getting ready for bed. And how about now? Oh, they're all sleeping together. Okay, so that was a picture read. And the reason a picture read is really important is now when we go back to read aloud the story, does the child have an idea of what the story is about? What we're trying to do, if you really want to help struggling and reluctant readers become passionate and proficient readers, you got to make them feel confident. People only do things that they feel like they're good at. You know, people don't like trying new things. I don't care what anybody says. A lot of people say they like to try new things. It's just not in human nature to try new things. People are creatures of habit, and they like to do things the same way all the time. And if you don't believe me, I want you to take a different route home tonight on your way from work, and you'll see how annoying that can be to you. So let's move to the next block in the 6 blocks program. We talked with the kid, we did a book talk, we did a picture read in our first half hour. So this next box, actually these next 2 blocks, are what I consider to be the most important blocks in the entire program. The reason I say that is because based on survey data from the 10,000 volunteers I've trained in this program, they say that these are the 2 blocks that they saw significant progress with their children. And so the 4th block in the 6 blocks program is to read aloud with the child. You know, folks, the single greatest resource I know about reading aloud is written by my friend Jim Trelease. He has a book called The Read Aloud Handbook. Believe me, he doesn't need me pushing the book. It's one of the best-selling education books of all time. Unfortunately, Jim doesn't speak anymore. He's one of the best speakers I've ever seen. And Jim always points out that it's the simple things that produce the best results. If reading aloud cost $129, every parent in America would rush out and buy it. And if we found out kids didn't like it, they would mandate it in the public school system. It sounds way too simple to have a significant result, but you need to understand this, folks. The research is actually really clear about this. You know, reading aloud is the single most important way you can help a child learn how to read better. And I always joke that if you look at, I'm kind of a nerd, so I've actually read all of the big government reading reports of the last 30 and 40 years, reports like the National Reading Panel and Becoming a Nation of Readers and A Nation at Risk and Why Johnny Can't Read. And it's funny because all these government reports are always really, really thick, thicker than the Bible. And all of them, usually around page 100, have one paragraph that says, the research seems to suggest the single best way to improve children's reading is to read aloud to children. And then they never mention it again because it sounds way too easy. Folks, you got to remember this. It's usually the simple things that produce the best results. There's a concept known as Occam's razor. It was developed by Sir William of Ockham back in the 13th century. And Sir William discovered that the best solution to most problems is usually the simplest one. We've tried to overcomplicate way too many things in the American education system. I go around the country talking to different school districts, and they're always proud about their scripted reading programs that they have. In Los Angeles, where I live, they used to have the Open Court scripted reading program. Well, I have my own program. It's called the Open Book Program. You take a book, you open it, and you read it. It's amazing how much better you can get at reading when you're actually reading something that you want to be reading. Now, if we did a good job with the picture read, now I know that the kid's excited about reading aloud the story. And the story that we're reading is called Pigs Aplenty, Pigs Galore by David McPhail. And if I may, I'd like to give you a couple of tips. First of all, I was able to download this entire story, the text and the pictures on the wonderful website pbskids.org from the TV show Between the Lions. I can tell you all of the great shows for children on the public broadcasting system. They all have excellent websites. You need to support your local PBS station because they do so much to help children, especially a lot of our most disadvantaged children. Another tip I'd like to give you is when I read aloud to kids, I like to pick out books that rhyme. And the reason is it just adds another layer of predictability for the child. It helps them anticipate the words that are coming next. Now, I could read aloud this entire story to you, but for the sake of time, we're not going to read it aloud. But I'll read aloud the first page. And this is what I would do with a kid. I would say, late one night as I sat reading, I thought I heard the sound of feeding. Through the kitchen door I crept, barely watching where I stepped. A crash, a bang, a shout, a yell. I slipped on something, then I fell. And folks, just so you know, I always make sure I've practiced the read aloud before I read it aloud to the child, because I want to bring emotion to my reading, or else we're just sending the signal, the message to kids that reading should be robotic. And there's nothing I hate worse than listening to robotic readers. That's the kid that reads, late one night as I sat reading, I thought I heard the sound of feeding. This is the kid that most people will identify in the class as the best reader. But just because you can read words quickly doesn't mean you actually understand what you're reading. What did you just read, Billy? I have no idea. So always be careful. When I'm building fluency in readers, fluency just doesn't mean the speed of reading. It also deals with accuracy and a fancy word we call prosody, which is reading with emotion, articulating. So that's reading aloud with the children. The next block, and again, this and reading aloud to me are the single most important things you can be doing with children during your time, your 1 hour together. And this is called partner reading. Now you have to understand, folks, that partner reading can definitely be scary. You know, I can tell you right now, this doesn't usually work the first time you do it with a child. And sometimes it doesn't even work the second or third time you do it with a child. But you got to be patient with this. By the fourth or fifth time, you'll start to get the hang of it. I mean, do you dance? Do any of you at home dance? The first time you dance with a new partner, you tend to step on some toes, but you start to feel the rhythm of one another, and it works much more smoothly in the long run. Now, there's lots of different steps to partner reading, and I like to go much more deeper when I do trainings in school districts and schools with volunteers. Basically, the gist of this is partner reading is when you and the child are reading in stereo together. And the reason we start with a countdown is we have to get in sync. So I always let the child determine what the countdown is. So it might be 3, 2, 1, apples, bananas, oranges, Kobe, Shaq, Phil, whatever the kid wants. And then me, the adult, I point to the words as we read aloud the story together. And then sometimes a kid wants to show off how good they are at reading. And so we come up with a signal. So I usually have the kid tap me on the shoulder. Now, if you're one of these people that's like, I don't want a kid touching me. Okay, why don't have the kid tap themselves on the knee? That's your signal. And so now the kid will start reading aloud on their own. Now, if they stumble, then I always encourage you to give the kid clues. Don't give them the word. You're not doing them any favors. Give them a strategy. But if you give them a couple of clues and it looks like the kid's not going to get the word, that's when you do the signal right back to them. You repeat your countdown, you point to the word again, and you read aloud together. And so let's say we were reading this passage together. I'll start reading it aloud. We'll read it together. So we'll do our countdown. We'll say it's 3, 2, 1. So we go together. 3, 2, 1. Late one night as I sat reading, I thought I heard the sound of feeding. Now the kid taps me on the shoulder, so I let the kid do it on their own. And the kid goes, throw, 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 throw. Okay. The kid's having a tough time with it, so I can give the kid some clues, like maybe rhymes with flu. Starts with the throw sound. You're right there, but it rhymes with flu. So the kid might say through, or the word through. That's kind of a tough word. Let's say maybe the picture would help me as a clue, or maybe I could give the kid a gesture, or maybe I can just skip over the word. If the kid's only missing one word out of every 10, that's not a big deal. We can read that and figure out the word based on context. But let's say that I'm looking at little Danny, and Danny doesn't look like he's going to get the word. So what I do is I tap him on the shoulder. That's our signal. We point to the word together. We do the countdown, 3, 2, 1, and we read together, "Through the kitchen door I crept." Pretty easy. This is actually probably the most difficult thing I have to train parents on how to do. And it's something that I like to go into a lot more extensively, giving you lots of examples. But that gives you the gist of what a partner read looks like. And so then we always conclude with writing and games. And I always say, yay, we get to work on worksheets all week. And if we do well, we can take a test on Friday. How exciting. You know, folks, I think the reason kids hate writing is because most adults hate writing. Because most adults were taught how to write by using a 5-paragraph essay, which is one form of writing. But writing can be so much more. Writing can be poetry. Writing can be songs. Writing can be newspaper articles. It's a process to be celebrated. And so I've written books about writing, and actually I wanted to just give you 5 really quick writing activity ideas from my book, 75 Plus Reading Strategies. And just so people don't get seizures at home, if you look in the upper right hand corner, there's a number in blue. All that number is the page number from the book. I don't want people freaking out trying to figure out what those numbers mean. It's not an episode of Lost. Okay, so the first idea I have for you is to have kids create their own books. Now, when I first started teaching elementary school, actually it was my second year teaching, when I taught second grade, they gave me 33 students and 2 textbooks. I believe the school thought I was Jesus and could multiply these textbooks. Well, fortunately, we had a lot of construction paper at my school, and we had a laminating machine. So I looked at my 33 students and I said, hey kids, we got to create our own library. And so in 6 weeks, 33 students wrote over 400 books for our classroom library. Now, these books varied from Yesenia's 30-page book, which would start in the History of Everything by Yesenia. In the beginning, there was, this amazing book. And then I'd get maybe a 6-page book from Jose, which you look at the cover and it would say, Mi Familia, poor Jose. And you open it up and it has pictures, and it says underneath the picture, Mi Papa. Then you turn the page, has the same type of picture. Now it says, Mi Mama. Turn the page, there's another picture, it looks the exact same. It says, Mi Hermanita. You turn the page, there's a little bit different picture because this one has 4 legs, and it says, Mi Perrito. And then you turn the page and it says, Elfin. Well, I took photos of all of my students. Actually, I was too cheap to take individual photos. So I would put the kids in groups of 3, take their picture, cut out their head, and I would put their picture on the back cover of the book, and I'd write a biography. And so the biography would say something like, Jose Cardenas is the author of Mi Familia, Mi Escuela, and the very popular Mis Amigos. He lives in Compton, California with his family. He enjoys soccer and spaghetti. When he grows up, he wants to be a police officer. Now, unintentionally, I learned a whole bunch of things by doing this. First of all, Jose, who was my non-reader, could actually read every kid's biography in the class. Why? Because he was interested. He memorized their biographies, but that's a critical first step in his literacy development. Secondly, Jose became an avid writer because the dude liked having his picture on the backs of books. So every day he gave me a new 6-page book, mis zapatos, mi pelota, mi cabeza. He was driving me nuts every single day. And then finally, he learned how to take care of books because he knew if he messed up Monique's book, she'd beat him up on the playground. I mean, one of the reasons I love teaching little kids is all the boys are afraid of the girls. I'll be like, Deshaun, what's happening? What's going on? He's like, I'm getting bullied. I'm like, what's his name? He's like, Loretta. Yeah, you wimp. Here's another idea for you. Silly questions. Have the kids write questions. Kids want to know about you, and they always write really personal questions. I used to use this when kids would finish early. I'd say either pick up a book or pick up a pencil and write me a question. And the kids always write personal questions. It would be like, Mr. Purcell, why are you not married? or Mr. Brissell, when are you going to trim your nose hairs? You know, kids are great that way. There's no filter with kids. Sniglets and morphemic analysis. I don't want to get too fancy on this. A sniglet is a word that should be in the English language that isn't. So the best one I ever had a 7th grader write me was a shrub head is a gardener who smokes the plants after trimming them. The best one I ever got from a 1st grader was a little girl came up with the word minute tater. Do you know what a minute tater is? If you ever go to McDonald's and get French fries, there's always one small French fry. That's the minute tater. Man, a 6-year-old girl gave me that. I thought that was brilliant. That was fantastic. Recipes and cookbooks. You know, every family has their own preferred recipes. It's a great reading and writing activity. Get your kids reading cookbooks with you and cooking in the kitchen with you and writing recipes. And then you can create a cookbook of your favorite recipes. If you're a teacher, collect recipes from all your different students and put them together into a cookbook. And then finally, you know, probably one of my favorite activities with students is to do Mad Libs. I used to have a 1st grader named Carlos, and Carlos just lived for Mad Libs. Every day he'd raise his hand enthusiastically. I'm like, okay, Carlos, you can read aloud your Mad Lib to all of us. And he'd get all excited in front of the kids and he'd say, once upon a time, there was lasagna. You know, if a kid likes it that much, you got to have them do it all the time. You see, this is what we're missing out on in school most of the time is we don't make school fun. You know, and this is what I love about this program. I really enjoyed being able to tutor kids because it gave me the opportunity to make things fun. And I made school fun too. It's just I had to close the door because I was always getting monitored and people were yelling at me for being too loud and having too much fun with the kids. But I have a philosophy when you get people smiling, that get people laughing and get people smiling. That's when they're learning because they don't even realize that they're learning. And hopefully, even in this webinar, I've gotten you to laugh a couple of times because that's how you start to really remember information. Now, can I give you some quick tips on do's and don'ts that I'd like you to do with your child? Can I do that? Thank you. I'm gonna assume you said yes. So here's a do. Always make reading fun. Your job is to make reading fun. I mean, read with silly voices, find fun books, get moving when you read with your children. Now, don't read things that your child shows little interest in. I was observing a teacher just yesterday, and he had the students reading this passage on recycled plastic bottles. I fell asleep listening to it. I can't believe the kids were able to stay awake listening to it. It was the most boring thing ever. Now, if you like recycled plastic bottles, then you should be reading that. But I would always find out what the kid is interested in and really cater to the child's interest. Here's another do. Read regularly with and in front of your child. I mean, the way you get kids excited about reading is you turn it into a habit. You should be reading all the time with children. And kids need to see you reading in front of them. I mean, kids ain't stupid. They don't see us reading as adults. They're never going to be reading. So you need to always send that message to children that reading is important to you, not just to them. Here's a don't. Don't force your child to read. I don't know anything in life that you can accomplish by forcing a person to do it. I mean, I think maybe in the short term they might do it, but they'll never choose to do it on their own. I mean, just look at basic psychology, folks. If you really want a person to do something as a lifetime habit, they have to choose to do it on their own. So don't force a child to read. Here's another do. Make reading into the reward. You know, and it goes along with the don't. Don't bribe your child to read. Kids aren't stupid. I mean, you know, if you have to bribe a kid how to read to get them excited about reading, they know it's not worth doing. I love that Pizza Hut has the Book It program, but if I ever meet the CEO of Pizza Hut, I'm going to make a suggestion. The way that program works right now is kids read lots of books and they get rewarded with pizza. If I ran the program, I would do it exactly the opposite way. Every time a kid came into Pizza Hut and enjoyed some pizza, I'd reward them with a book. It's a subtle difference, but it's a major difference. You're sending a different message to the kid. You're sending the message there that reading is the reward. So if you're actually going to reward a kid for reading, I always reward kids with reading time. I'll say, hey, kids, we do a good job. We'll do another read aloud later, or we'll read outside, or we'll read under the table in a tent with flashlights. If you're going to get the kids actual rewards, go to 99-cent store. I get the kids books and journals and pencils and stickers. Heck, stickers. Stickers for little kids work better than smokes on a prison yard. The kids always want those stickers. All right. So now I hope I provided you with a ton of value. I'm even starting to lose my voice. I've been giving you so much value, hopefully. And I can assure you that if you do the right things and avoid the wrong things, your child will be a success. And that's what I want. I want your child to be a success. I've given you a grand overview of what has worked for me with kids. But if you'd like to take your learning to a higher level and you'd like me to teach you and train you, I'd like to tell you about the system I have and invite you to enroll in my new program called the Reading Multiplier. This is the 6 Blocks program that I've created and trained over 10,000 volunteers to use with struggling and reluctant readers for an hour a week over a 6-month period. All right. Everybody take a deep breath in. Take a deep breath out. Are you tired of doing it alone? Well, worry no more. We're going to call this the Reading Depot. You can do it, and I can help you. I promise you. Do you have a child that's bored by reading? Or maybe your child gets stuck all the time when they're reading? Or maybe reading just seems to be overwhelming to your child? Well, you're in business, because I'm here to pump you up so that you can help your child become a better, more passionate, and more proficient reader. And now, the online training program is awesome. I mean, you're going to love this. It's going to help you in all sorts of ways. I mean, first of all, it's going to decrease the guesswork of reading. Your child is going to feel so confident after going through this program. And, it's a great opportunity for you to bond with children as well. It's also going to decrease the cost of tutoring. I mean, I'm a parent. My kids are actually in Kumon for math, and I've literally paid thousands of dollars for Kumon. And even though I actually disagree with the approach for Kumon, it works for the kids. And I believe if something works for a kid, you do it. I mean, I never understood why people would pay $125 an hour to get their kids tutored in reading. But, it's like that old Jiffy Lube ad with the mechanic with the grease all over him holding the big monkey wrench. And he says, you can pay me a little now or a lot later. Is it worth investing a little bit of time and money into a good tutor as opposed to having to pay later on for your child not knowing how to read very well? Well, this online training program is going to decrease that cost of tutoring altogether. So you're not going to have to spend the hundreds or thousands of dollars that I see people spending on tutoring programs with their children. This program is going to increase the love of reading in your child. I promise that. I guarantee you that. This is my specialty, is getting kids to love reading. They might hate reading right now. I promise you, in this program, when you're doing this program, you are going to get that kid to love reading. And the reason is because you're going to find out what that kid's passion is, and you're going to read all about that passion. I want you to know this, folks. Shakespeare is important, but before you get a kid reading Shakespeare, you got to get them interested in reading. If all your boy wants to read is Captain Underpants, let him read Captain Underpants. I promise you, Captain Underpants is going to help that kid. Why? The research is really clear about this. It doesn't matter what you read. What matters is how much you read. It doesn't matter if you're reading James Joyce or James and the Giant Peach. People who read more read better. This program is designed to help you get your kid reading more and reading better. We're also going to increase your child's reading proficiency, and that's what I was just talking about. It's in academia, we call it the Matthew effect. The rich get richer and the poor get poorer. What happens is that kids that read more start to become more confident at reading. And so since they're confident at reading, they read more and more. And the more you read, the better you get. And that's the positive. The negative is there's a lot of kids that they don't feel like they're very good readers. And what happens is, since they identify themselves as poor readers, they don't read as much. And that creates the gap that you see in most schools. I mean, I've seen this gap time and time and again. And it's always between kids that love to read versus kids that hate to read. We are going to get your child to love reading. We're going to increase your child's reading confidence. The more confident you are, the better you are at reading. We're going to improve your child's vocabulary. I mean, that's the single best way to improve your vocabulary, is to read a lot. And so we're going to read every single day with your kid. But this program, all you have to do, the program itself is only an hour a week for 6 months. It takes very little of your time. But if you're like a lot of the people I've trained, you'll want to do it even more frequently with your child. And we're going to improve your child's overall achievement. I mean, think about that, folks. I mean, reading is everything. If you want to be good at math or science or social studies, you need to read. You need to be a good reader. And guess what? We're going to make your child a good reader. And it's going to be so much more simple than anything I see being done in public schools today. And we're going to lighten the burden on those teachers. I mean, think about it. Your child, if you're a parent, your child is only one of 20 in a classroom. How much individualized attention do you really expect that teacher to give your child? Well, this program is designed to give your child that individualized instruction. And that's the secret to why the program's so successful. You know, you're going to get 8 modules in the program. The program's pretty awesome. You're going to get all kinds of video training. These are a combination of videos I film in the studio, plus videos taken from live trainings that I've done with school districts that bring me in to train all of their educational leaders in the school district, or I have individual schools that'll bring me in to work with their parent volunteers. You're going to get 8 modules, and those modules are going to take you through the specifics behind the 6 blocks program, plus a whole bunch of other goodies that I know you're going to love. You're also going to get audio of every single video that I submit to you. And those audios are for those of you that learn better driving. You know, I've always considered my car my private university because I have a pretty long commute back and forth to work. And so I just listen to books on tape all the time, which, by the way, is a great way to get your kids excited about reading as well. So I'm going to give you all the audios of everything that we're talking about for those of you that prefer listening to it. And I'm also going to give you the transcripts of everything that we talk about, plus a whole bunch of really cool quick tip sheets that'll help you bring reading to life for your child. You know, I'm giving you all these materials because I believe the program has to be comprehensive. It's kind of like going to war with a small country. How do you win a war? You do it by land, by air, by sea. So I'm going to give you videos for those of you that are better visual learners. I'm going to give you audios for those of you that are auditory learners. And I'm going to give you everything written for those of you that want to go deeper and read about it all the time. But that's not all I'm going to do. I'm also going to give you a whole bunch of bonus items. I'm going to give you, this is 10 ways to help struggling readers. This is a quick reference guide you can use as a bookmark. This is one of my most popular giveaways that when I'm doing in-person trainings, I give bookmarks away. And this is the bookmark I give. It gives 10 really quick ways to help your struggling readers. I'm also going to give you access to specialized reading lists that I've created for the platinum subscribers to my lazyreaders.com book club. Now, on the general site, everybody has free access, but I do have a platinum subscription list. And these lists have been customized for specific needs, such as 10 great books for 3rd grade boys who like trucks, or 10 great books for 2nd grade boys who love sports, or 10 great books for children interested in history. These are worth their weight in gold, and you're going to get access to all of them. I'm also, as another bonus, going to give you the top 100 children's books. These are books that were voted on by children. Over 100,000 children voted on their favorite books. And so I'm going to give you the list of the top 100 books that kids have selected as their favorites. This is a great resource for you when you don't know what to read with your child. This is a great starting point. And then finally, I'm also going to give you a copy of my book, Secrets for Successful Readers, which includes some of my favorite tips for getting kids to read at home. And these are a lot of tips that I've developed as being a dad that have worked with my own children. And I know they're going to work with your kids. Now, I know what you're saying right now. Show me the money. How much does all this cost, Danny? Well, I mean, it doesn't cost much at all, actually. It doesn't cost anything, really. It's an investment. You know, I've had districts that have spent tens of thousands of dollars to bring me in for the week to train all of their teachers on how to work a program like this. And people always ask, why do districts spend that much money? It's because they know it saves them hundreds of thousands of dollars over the failed reading programs that they've utilized before to no avail. I'll have individual schools will actually bring me in for a full day, typically for $10,000 just for the day, so that I can work in person with their teachers, their aides, and their parents. And they want me in person because they want to have that access to ask their questions and to look at very specific scenarios for their own kids. You know, and so I love doing that. I still do that to this day. I work with individual schools and with school districts. But I learned long ago, there's only one of me and I can't be everywhere all the time. It's really important to me that I spread the message of how to work with struggling and reluctant readers. And so what I did, thanks to the invention of the internet, is I created an online program that I began marketing to schools that couldn't book me, that they wanted to book me, but I was in West Virginia at the time and they wanted me in Texas and I couldn't make it there. And so I gave another option, which was for individual schools. They can get my program, my online program, for $1,497. And that program gives their entire school site access to all the different reading materials that I've been talking about with you, the step-by-step program, all the videos, all the audio, and all of the written materials. But it still wasn't good enough for me, because I'm really on a mission. I'm on a mission to bring joy back in education. I think the reason we got so many kids that are miserable in school is they find reading to be a real drag. And so I wanted to design a program that I could train every parent in America, every teacher in America, every aide in America, how to work one-on-one with a struggling and reluctant reader. We already know from the research that there's no such thing as a reading disability that can't be beaten. Now, I want to help struggling and reluctant readers, and I really want to help you. I want to make this available to the masses. And so I've designed the program that I'm offering you. I'm going to give it to you for only $297. $297. And I'm going to give you a 30-day money-back guarantee. If this isn't the greatest program you've ever had, then you just send it right back, because I really want you to enjoy this program. I don't actually want you just to enjoy the program. I want you bragging about it to your friends, the mailman. I want this to be the greatest thing that you've ever had happen to your child, because you and I are going to help your child get better at reading together. Now, why should you enroll right now? I was thinking about that today. I was thinking about it when I was driving to come tape this webinar. As I was thinking about it, as I was driving, I was looking at my windshield, and I realized I have a small crack in my windshield. Have any of you ever had a crack in your windshield? I bet you probably have. I bet you know that if you just, it's only about $10 to $15 to just take it in, and a guy can easily fix that crack. But what happens if you don't fix the crack? Well, then all of a sudden one day the crack becomes bigger, and all of a sudden you have to buy a new windshield, and it costs you hundreds of dollars, something that should have just been a real cheap, quick fix. You know, if you don't fix the little crack, you wind up having to replace the entire windshield. So why wait? That's what I always say. Why wait? Enroll in the program today. This program is for you. It's to get your kid excited about reading. I mean, Why do you want your kid to delay in their reading? Make them a proficient reader now. I'm a big believer in an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. You know, you don't want to create a big problem in your child. You know, I believe me, I work with teenagers as well as with little kids. And I can tell you, if you think it's tough getting an 8-year-old to read, you know, try working with a 13-year-old that doesn't read at grade level. That's an even bigger proposition. It's a trickier proposition. You know, you can pay a little now or a lot later. I say invest in right now. And just to make this easier for you folks, I'm going to throw in the world's greatest bonus ever. For anybody that enrolls right now, I'm going to give you a copy of my book, Read, Lead, and Succeed. This book took me forever to research. I researched over, I researched all kinds of successful people in the entertainment industry, in government, in business, in the military, in athletics. I wanted to find out the reading habits of successful people. And this is what I found, is there's plenty of readers that are not necessarily leaders, but there aren't any successful leaders that are not avid readers. And so I wrote this book actually as a favor to a friend of mine. It's a principal that was trying to figure out a way to engage his faculty. And so he uses this program with his faculty, but you can use the same program with your kids. Every single week I give you a concept. This is based on my kids at their school. They have a program called the 6 Pillars of Character. And so I think that we really need to surround kids with lots of positive images. And so every week I give a positive concept to kids. And then I give you an inspirational quote, an inspirational story. I give you, as an adult, a book that you should read to inspire you, but you're an adult, so you're probably too lazy to read it. So I also recommend a specific children's picture book that demonstrates the same concept, and then that way you'll get the concept that way. So I'm going to give you my book, Read, Lead, and Succeed, as a bonus. I'm also going to include the book, Read, Lead, and Succeed, the Page-a-Day Quote Book. In this book, every single day, all 365 days a year. Sorry, I didn't account for leap year, but for the other three years in a row, I'm going to give you 3 quotes a day. These are 3 positive quotes on reading, one quote a day on reading, 1 on leading, and 1 on succeeding, to keep you in a positive mindset. Because there's a lot of negativity in the world, folks. Let's face it. And we can use a lot more positivity, and that's what I'm all about, is positivity. And breeding kids that are better people, not necessarily smarter people, but better people. I am also going to include the action guide. This is all part of a program I have with Read, Lead, and Succeed. So the action guide is over 50 pages of specific actions you can take to help you achieve more. And I'm also going to throw in all the CDs. You'll get all of the MP4 versions. These are the audio recordings of the book Read, Lead, and Succeed, so that you can listen to these positive messages in the car. Again, you know, I think people have to hear messages, they have to see the messages, they have to read about the messages. When you surround yourself with positive messages, it starts to become part of your mindset. Why not do that for your children every single day? So the book Read, Lead, and Succeed usually retails for $19.97, and the Page-a-Day quotes also retail for $19.97. A lot of people don't realize that the action guide actually goes for $59.97, and the CDs go for $97. The entire package is marketed to schools and to actually, I use this with my corporate trainings as well. So this whole package, this Read, Lead, and Succeed program, is actually available for $197. But for anybody that enrolls in the Reading Multiplier 6 Blocks program that I'm offering you today, you get this for free. You get this for free. So you're enrolling in a program for $297. You just got another program that is worth $197 in the program. An amazing deal. An amazing deal. Now, one of my favorite movies of all time is The Shawshank Redemption. And there's a great scene between Morgan Freeman and Tim Robbins where Andy Dufresne is talking to Red, and Andy says, you know what, Red? You can get busy living or you can get busy dying. Folks, your child can read, and I can help you. I'm looking forward to seeing you and to serving you. Let's make sure that your child becomes a reader for life. So to do that, just click the link below to help your child become a better reader today. And I thank you for your time. God bless you. Is that all right?
Sooner than later, cut the phone. Oh, okay. As much as you can. Okay. It's you, it's only one person in front of you. Then, it's like you went from the three things a little bit fast, but I think that over here we did it pretty good. Okay. So we will cut that, but the only thing is over here you didn't do the bonus. So I will have the bonus, it was okay. Let's see. Right now, we're going to put it up. We're going to get it up and running, and then later on. But it was great. So, how do you feel?
Hey, we got one now.
Yeah.
It's done. And
one of the things that, it's a little bit, not confusing, but, we are repeating. Everything that we are doing, it's running into the same goal. So it's not a lot like from here I pass you here, and then the big thing is going to be this webinar, and then the other thing is going to be, it's a lot of the same. Yeah. You see, yesterday we spent a chunk of time